Hey, I just want to do a quick shop tour of my current workshop in my basement in my suburban house. One of the reasons I want to do that is I'm about to go through a full restoration of the workshop, and I just kind of want to document what I currently have going on. I'm going to do something a little more non-traditional. A lot of shop tours, everything's looking great, everything's put away, squared away. My shop is a total mess right now. And I also kind of want to go over the evolution of my shop and also my evolution in woodworking, metalworking, handyman, do-it-yourself type things. So before we go into the shop here, let's take a look at just kind of my involvement in anything related to woodworking. So I went actually digging around for maybe some of the older photos that I had of some projects I got involved in when I was younger. And the best I could find was this picture of an old bicycle I had built when I was, I think, 11 or 12 years old. I used to run a little bike shop out of my parents' basement when I was in middle school. So I was already pretty interested in mechanically oriented type things when I was younger. I was born long enough ago that there isn't a photograph or a video of almost everything I worked on. Building bike ramps, tree houses, building lamps out of wine bottles, building anything from a coin box from a fallen tree in the woods. I was doing all kinds of stuff when I was younger and just kind of using my dad's tools out of his workshop. And that's usually a common thread with a lot of different people that get involved in woodworking and home improvement projects. But sometimes people discover it a little later in life, and I didn't really start to own a lot of tools myself until quite a bit later. But so this is a bike that I had built. It's built from scratch, so every single part was purchased separately. The frame, the fork, the wheels, the rims, even all the bolts and screws and things like that are all custom and custom colored. So this is something, and I would help other people build their bikes. So that was kind of something I used to do when I was a kid. But then, stopped riding bikes once I probably got into high school. This next picture here, I found this old picture. I have an old busted up guitar, and that's actually a piece of a whiskey still. I think I probably made this, I don't know how old I was. I think I was probably in college. So I was playing around with soldering and experimenting with chemistry and things like that. So I had a whiskey still. I don't think I actually ever ended up finishing it and running it, but that was an experiment I had going on. This next one is actually a jiu-jitsu dummy. So I used to do a bit of fighting quite a while ago, and I built this jiu-jitsu practice dummy. So you can see it here with its gi on, and then also me giving a nice chokehold. It wasn't until I was probably into my mid-late 20s that a friend of mine, while I was living in Denver, called me up and said, "Hey, can you help me put in a patio?" I think he just kind of knew that I was a handy type guy, even though I didn't really even have any tools. I was also an apartment dweller at the time, but he had a house that he was renting, and he wanted to put a little patio in the back. So he called me over, and over a weekend we were able to put in this patio, and it actually turned out pretty good. And I think that kind of put a bit of a spark in me, kind of realizing that I do like doing stuff like that. I just didn't have much of an opportunity because I lived in an apartment, and I was also used to move around quite a bit. But the next apartment I actually ended up living in was actually kind of like a little bit of a duplex, and it had a small little basement on it. So I started to collect some tools, and I ended up building this little tote for my tools, a bit of a bag so I could carry them around and just keep them all in one spot. And that's actually when my wife, or my current wife at the time, I was just dating her, she introduced me to Instructables, and it was kind of a website where people get together and show projects that they're working on and instructions on how they did them. And I thought that was kind of cool. So this was actually part of my first Instructable. I showed in some graphics and text how I put together this little tool tote. And then at the time also, I didn't have a ton of money. So one of the things I was looking for is used older tools and started to get into restoration. So one of the first restorations I did was this lathe. I think I picked this up at an estate sale for a couple of pennies. I mean, it was pretty cheap. So ended up restoring that, but then I needed some tools to work on lathes, and so I decided to make my own tool as well. So this is a picture of the first tool that I made. I turned the handle on the actual lathe and then got some steel stock and ended up setting that up. But then, the tool collection continues. I picked up this drill press out of some guy's yard, pretty rusted up. I got this also for pretty cheap too. I think I got it for $25 or something. And it restored real nice. And actually, that's still the drill press that I'm currently using. Did quite a few improvements to that, replaced the chuck and, did some speed tests and rotational tests on it and everything else. So, that it's still actually a pretty good drill press. And so the shop that I was actually working out of at the time is this one right here. So this was that basement garden level bedroom, really, and it just kind of turned into a workspace. So I got my computer down there. I have a couple workbenches. You can even see there's a lawnmower underneath the table. But I was able to produce, some decent work out of there. You can see here I restored a bench vise, and then I started getting into hand planes, got a bunch of old Stanleys and did a restoration on those, as you can see here. And probably the largest project I was able to do out of that basement shop was this record cabinet here. This record cabinet, I found this turntable at an estate sale as well. It wasn't working at the time, so I got that for a few dollars, and I just ended up replacing all the resistors on it, got it back into good shape, put everything together here. Those doors open up, and this is actually a record cabinet I'm still using, so that was a fun little project. And then I was finally able to graduate onto another apartment, and this is where I actually got an above ground level apartment bedroom, and that ended up turning into one of my first major shops, as you can see here. So I had quite a few projects out of there. That was a fun little shop, definitely a limiting space, but very cool to run a workshop out of an apartment bedroom. As you can see here, I got a table saw restoration that I had done. So still working on collecting more tools. In this next shot here too, you can see that even that shop was evolving. And I've got a newer table saw even there. That's got the cast iron top one with a nice Biedermeier fence. I picked that up from, I think, a guy that actually has a YouTube video as well. I picked that up from him for a really good deal at the time, I remember. And as you can see there too, I got a couple of computers. I actually work in IT, and I was working out of there as well. So I kind of had a workshop office going on. And as you can see, I even have a dust collector in there, and you can see it's a little cramped. I got a lot of tools going on, but you just kind of use what you got. So that was a great little shop, and I'm sure a lot of people were thinking, well, wasn't the sound coming out of there a little crazy? And it actually wasn't, because this is a really old apartment building, and it was made out of very thick concrete walls. And actually, even when I had the dust collector and a table saw running anywhere else, even in the apartment, it just sounded like maybe somebody had a vacuum on. So that worked to my advantage. Definitely don't know if that would have worked out well in a newer apartment building that has a bit thinner walls. And at the time too, I started getting more interested in handyman type work, actually. So in between consulting gigs or on weekends when I didn't have much to do, I started just kind of doing handyman work around the city in Denver. I was doing just kind of light type work, installing TVs, putting in anything from faucets, door handles, blinds, minor projects like that. So no major remodels or anything like that. But, I enjoyed going around and meeting new people and doing smaller projects like that. And that was kind of my introduction into home improvement. So then I ended up moving to Atlanta, Georgia, and moving to the suburbs. And that's when I really had a lot more space. And that's where I have my current shop, is in a large basement space with some windows. So that's kind of has been a dream to get that much space for a workshop. But since I did live in a suburban house, I started having a lot more remodel type projects. So here you can see a picture of what is currently my office, but I think they were just kind of using it to store their dogs before. And I think they let them go to the bathroom in there quite a bit, because I couldn't even walk into this room at one point without gagging. It really smelled that bad to me. So ended up ripping everything out, as you can see, and then did the remodel, did some built-in bookcases, hardwood floor, gave it a new paint job, some new casing and baseboard and everything else. So that turned out to be a really nice space. And as you can see, there's actually 2 bookcases in here, one on each side of the room. So it's kind of a library office. And then one of the first larger projects I did with my new shop was this office desk or table, and that allows me to kind of look outside, and so that turned out pretty well as well, and that was made out of wormy maple, so that was fun. And then as you can see here, I've got a plan for what I want to do with my new workshop. I've just kind of sketched this up on some drawing paper, created some to scale drawings of the different tools I expect to have. Some of them I currently have, some that I plan to buy, and just kind of moving them around to see how I can more effectively use the space, because I've been using this current workshop for about 2.5 years, and it just kind of got set up really quickly. And I started, I needed space and set it up, and it's just it doesn't seem like it's the most efficient way to use it. So let's actually go down in the shop and take a look at what I have, and maybe go over some of the things I plan to do. So when I first got into this shop space, actually there was no electricity in here. The whole basement just had a single circuit and a couple of lights. So one of the first things I did is, put in a lot of electrical circuits. I've got an electrical circuit up there with my dust collection system. I've got electrical outlets all over, as you can see, along the countertop space. And then also I put in all of these lights. So I got plenty of shop lights in here, and that's been a fantastic change. Put on this glass door. As you can see, I've got windows in here, and I've got the countertop spaces here. One thing that I don't really like about this is I made them pretty deep. As you can see here, I can reach things here, but I don't really need the space to be that deep. I've got my miter station here. I've got more tool space, things hanging around, lots of tools. And then I have my table saw station here with the outfeed. The one thing I don't like about this outfeed table is I tend to use it just to build my projects on, and then it's in the way when I need to use the table saw. And as you can see, it just collects stuff. So this is a very messy version of my shop. Usually the shop isn't this messy, but I wanted to show you kind of what happens when things get out of control. I have a 7-month-old daughter, and I have lots of house projects going on, so yes, when I get busy, this is what the shop looks like. I've also got this little metal cutting saw that I set up here. This is actually pretty handy. I've got a buffer, I've got a grinder, I've got a grinder in the other room. I've got tools all over the place, an old vise that hasn't been used yet. I got some clamp station here. I've got some drawers. I like to keep all my spare parts in here. This works pretty well. As you can see, got a couple other tools over here, sander, got some air tools, got some scrap wood laying around, some more scrap wood. There's that old lathe that I restored. Just a lot of stuff laying around, and there's that drill press still in use here. So this is pretty handy. Looks like that doesn't work anymore. So I think that's most of the shop. Oh, I've also got this little router table built into my table saw. So really what I'm thinking about doing in this shop is I think the best way to arrange it, and what I had on that piece of paper, is that over in this area here I want to have a wraparound countertop space with cabinets beneath and cabinets up top, and then have my workbench right here. And if I have my workbench here, I can keep my table saw still here, and then the rest of this area here will all be open space for additional tools. And the other thing I'm also going to add too is I'm going to put a door right here, so that way I can go straight from outside and I can come right into the shop, bring in lumber or anything else I'm working on, and then I'll probably set up some countertop space over here as well. So those are some of the things that I'm thinking about working on here. Probably the first thing is this concrete wall over here is going to have to get a wall set up. I'm probably going to work on that today. And then I'm going to put in some electrical. I'm going to put in I think 4 different 220 outlets, because some of the tools I'm thinking about picking up are actually going to be in 220. So I'm actually going to replace this table saw, and that's kind of been the inspiration for redoing the whole shop. You know, I'm kind of at a stage now where I'm going to get a nice cabinet saw, and then once I started thinking about that and putting in some 220 outlets, and maybe even updating my dust collection system, you know, it was time to kind of reorganize. And I'll also epoxy the floor, so that'll be some of the first things I'm working on here. And I do have some tools I plan to buy that I've been saving up for, and so I'll be getting those as well. And the other thing with dust collection too, as you can see here, I'm actually up here. It actually exits outside, but that's something I'm a little bit worried about. I haven't had any issues with it because I actually have my gas water heater here and also HVAC system, and obviously if you are pulling too much air out of here, you can pull some gas out of here into the room, and that's dangerous. I do have a detector set up right here. I haven't had any issues with that, but I'm actually gonna replace the dust collection system, and I want to just be sure that I am actually venting directly into the airspace here, so I'm not pulling any of that gas out. So that's another thing to think about. I'm going to have to replace that dust collection system, and I think I'll probably just set that up in here with a filter. But I'm trying to think if there's anything else in this shop. You know, I mean, I've done a lot of things out of here. I've practically remodeled half of this. I guess it's kind of like a 90s McMansion. You know, it's one of these big 90s houses that isn't built to the best quality, and a lot of times it's a little too big in certain places than it really needs to be. But I don't really record a lot of the projects too, because it really increases the time to create content. So if a project's going to take you 5 hours to do, it might take 10 if you're going to record it. So so maybe 1 in 10 projects I'll do some sort of recording on, and I try to only do content that there just isn't anything out there. So if I have a project coming up or a new idea, I usually do a quick search on the web. Is there any kind of blogs out there, forums? Does anybody do anything about YouTube? If there's not really anything out there or anything of any quality, then I'll make something. But otherwise, I just kind of stick to my projects because I have a limited amount of time. So hopefully this video is somewhat helpful for anyone out there that's either getting into woodworking, home improvement, just is building up their first shop. Because you see a lot of these shops online, and you're like, wow, that's an amazing shop. And mine started off as kind of a little basement shop with a tool bag, and that's kind of how it starts. But then it just evolves. It kind of takes on a life of its own. You end up with a huge shop like this, and the next shop I have, I'm sure, is going to be fantastic as well. So as I make improvements in here, hopefully I'll probably just put some additional content up, or maybe I'll just do a review once I have the shop completely remodeled. So thanks for joining, and leave some comments in the comments section. Thanks.